So, let's go back to when things were still normal. At least, that's how I remember them now. My wife, Kate, and I were married for over a decade, and life seemed solid. We had our routines, our inside jokes, and that unspoken comfort you get after sharing so many years together. Honestly, I thought we were happy. Or at least I was. Then Mira moved in next door. You know that feeling when someone enters a room and everything changes? Like a spark. She had this energy that drew everyone toward her. Blonde hair, always loose and carefree. That easy smile, and the way she could make anyone feel like they were the most important person in the room. It wasn't long before she started hosting these little gatherings. Wine nights, weekend barbecues, casual chats over the fence. She was the kind of neighbor who always had her door open, welcoming in anyone who wanted to stop by. And believe me, people did. I won't lie, I liked her from the start. She had this way of making you feel seen, you know? It wasn't like I was unhappy with Kate, but it was hard not to enjoy being around someone like Mira. She'd ask about my work, my hobbies, and genuinely seemed interested. It felt refreshing. But don't get me wrong, at that point, I wasn't looking for anything. I was still faithful to Kate, even if her late nights at work were starting to worry me. That's when things started changing with Kate. I figured it was just work stress at first, longer hours, meetings running late, her coming home worn out and distant. I mean, we all have rough patches, right? I'd ask her how her day was, try to make conversation, but it felt like talking to a wall. Her eyes were always glazed over, glued to her phone, like I wasn't even there. It was subtle at first, but you start noticing when your own wife seems more interested in swiping through her phone than telling you about her day. Myra's gatherings became my little escape. There was something carefree about her, and those nights felt like a break from the tension that seemed to be building at home. I'd head over, have a drink or two, chat with her and the other neighbors. Kate, of course, had no interest. If she wasn't working, she was too tired or needed to get up early the next day. More and more, I found myself alone at those gatherings, with Myra's laughter ringing in my ears and her eyes meeting mine a little longer than what you'd call friendly. It wasn't long before Tom, my best friend since college, started poking fun at me. "You seem different, man," he'd say. Tom and I had been through thick and thin together, so he knew me well. "I'm just saying, Myra's got you all smiley. What's going on?" I'd brush him off, of course. I wasn't doing anything wrong, just trying to get some air, away from the stale silence that Kate brought home every night. And then there was Martha. Every neighborhood has a Martha, the older, well-meaning but overbearing lady who watches everything from behind her curtains. She'd catch me on my way back from Myra's and say things like, "You be careful, James. That girl's trouble." Or, "You know, not everyone who smiles at you has good intentions." I'd laugh it off, but a part of me wondered if she was right. I mean, what did it say about me that I was happier at my neighbors' parties than in my own living room? Then came the first real red flag. Kate started coming home later and later. And it wasn't just the hours. It was her demeanor. She'd walk in, tired but content. I could tell something was off, but I was afraid to dig. When I'd ask, she'd shrug it off. "Work's just insane right now," she'd say, dropping her purse and heading straight to the bedroom. Sometimes she'd barely even look at me. And I tried to be understanding. Work was hectic for her, sure. But there was this gut feeling, that nagging itch that tells you something's not right. One night, Mira hosted one of her casual gatherings. This one felt different, more intimate. I went over, and we ended up sitting on her porch, just the two of us. The conversation flowed so easily. She leaned in, asking me about things Kate never even bothered to, like my love for hiking, my dreams of starting a small business someday. And she listened, really listened. As the night went on, she touched my arm lightly when she laughed, her eyes locking with mine in a way that made my stomach tighten. "James," she said with that teasing smile of hers, "you ever get the feeling you're missing out on something? Like there's this whole world out there just waiting for you to take the first step?" I laughed it off, playing dumb. "I'm a married man, Mira," I said, though I wasn't sure who I was trying to convince. "Yeah, but are you happy?" she shot back, her gaze drilling right into me. And that question lingered long after I left her porch that night. Days went by, and things didn't get any better with Kate. If anything, they got worse. She was like a ghost, barely acknowledging me. Her phone glued to her hand all the damn time. And that nagging feeling grew louder. I could feel something slipping between us, something I couldn't grasp. And it wasn't just paranoia. I knew her, and this wasn't the Kate I'd married. So yeah, I kept going to Myra's gatherings. I craved that feeling, being seen, being heard. And yeah, it felt wrong, but I couldn't stop. Myra became my confidant. And though we never crossed any lines physically, there was this tension between us, this unspoken what if, lingering in the air. But all that would change soon. And I had no idea that my world was about to be flipped upside down by a woman who wasn't even my wife. So, let me pick up where I left off. After those gatherings with Myra, life at home didn't improve. If anything, it got worse. There was this distance between me and Kate that felt like a canyon, one that I had no idea how to cross. But I never expected the moment when my gut suspicion would start to look more like reality. It all began with a car, a sleek, shiny red sports car. It stood out like a sore thumb in our neighborhood, so when I saw it pulling up to drop off Kate one evening, I couldn't help but notice. The thing was a beauty, top-down convertible, the kind that makes you wonder who the hell has the money to own one like that. But my focus wasn't on the car, it was on Kate. As she stepped out, she looked different. Not just tired from work, but almost glowing, like she'd just had the best night of her life. I watched her say something to the driver, her smile wider than I'd seen in months, and then that car peeled off into the distance like it was running from something. I asked her about it, tried to play it cool. "Hey, so you got a ride today? Nice wheels. Who was that?" And she didn't even miss a beat. "Oh, just a taxi," she said, brushing it off like it was nothing. She didn't look me in the eye when she said it, though. I pressed, just a little. "A taxi? For real? Looked like a Ferrari or something," I said, laughing, trying to make it sound like a joke. "Some special kind of Uber?" And that's when she snapped. Not in a loud way, but sharp enough that it left a sting. "It's just a car, James." Jesus, can I take a cab without getting the third degree? I let it go that night. I mean, what else could I do? I didn't have proof of anything, just this gut feeling gnawing at me. But once you start to suspect, you notice everything. It was like my eyes were suddenly wide open to all the little things that I'd been ignoring. And the more I watched, the more it felt like she was slipping away. Then, that damn car started showing up all over the place. Always the same red sports car, always late at night, parked in front of her office. It became like a routine. Kate would text me around 6 or 7 p.m. saying she'd be staying late to finish up some project or whatever excuse she could think of that day. And like clockwork, the car would be there, headlights glowing under the streetlights, as if mocking me every time I drove past. I couldn't just sit back and let it go anymore. So one night I decided to stick around. I parked a couple of blocks away from her office, and when I saw that red car pull up, my heart dropped. My whole body felt like it was vibrating, adrenaline, fear, rage, all of it just pounding in my chest. The driver stepped out, and I could barely believe my eyes. It was David, her boss, slick, well-dressed, hair perfectly combed back like he was in some cologne ad. He had this smug grin on his face as he strolled up to the entrance, and my stomach twisted into knots. I stayed put for a while, just watching. And sure enough, about an hour later, out they came, David and Kate, side by side. I couldn't make out much from where I was, but their body language said it all. They were close, way too close for a boss and his hard-working employee. And the way Kate looked at him, I hadn't seen that look in ages. When he leaned in and whispered something in her ear, she threw her head back and laughed, and I felt my grip on the steering wheel tighten until my knuckles turned white. It took everything in me not to get out and confront him right there. But I held back. I needed to be sure. So that's when I started keeping a journal. Sounds stupid, right? Like something a teenager would do. But I didn't know what else to do. I had to make sense of all the thoughts crashing around in my head, and putting them on paper seemed like the only way to see the bigger picture. I started writing down every time she came home late, every excuse she gave, every night that damn red sports car showed up at her office. And man, did that journal fill up fast. Kate was good at hiding things, though, I'll give her that. She acted like everything was fine at home, like we were just another married couple dealing with the usual work-life crap. But her phone? That was a whole other story. She started taking it with her everywhere, like it was attached to her hip. Shower? Phone's there. Cooking dinner? Phone's right by her side. Hell, she even took it to bed with her, holding onto it like it was some kind of lifeline. And I noticed the password had changed. When did that happen? I had no clue, but it was another thing that didn't sit right with me. Tom, my best friend, knew something was up. He could see it in the way I talked, the way I carried myself. Hell, the way I stopped showing up at our usual Friday night hangouts. "You all right, man?" he'd ask. And I'd lie like I always did. Yeah, just busy with work, I'd say, knowing full well that work was the last thing on my mind. He didn't buy it, of course. Tom never buys my BS. But he didn't push either. He just kept an eye on me, letting me know he was there without needing to say much. Things between me and Mira didn't cool down either. If anything, the tension grew stronger. She had this way of looking at me, like she could see right through me, like she knew exactly what I was going through without me having to say a word. And maybe that's why I felt comfortable telling her about the red car, about the suspicion eating away at me like acid. I half expected her to tell me I was crazy, that I was overreacting. But she didn't. Instead, she just nodded, like she'd known all along that something was off. "James," she said, her voice low and serious. "You deserve to know the truth. Whatever it is, you deserve that much." And I remember thinking how those words were like a lifeline, pulling me up from drowning in all my doubts and fears. But that truth, it wasn't going to come easy. And as much as I thought I was ready for it, part of me knew that whatever I found out would change everything. By this point, it felt like I was living a double life. One where I was just another married guy going through the motions, and another where I was this paranoid, obsessed detective trying to figure out if my wife was actually cheating on me. And let me tell you, that shit messes with your head. Every little thing starts to look like a clue, and every moment feels like it's teetering on the edge of some massive revelation. It's hard to pinpoint when I knew, like really knew, that Kate was gone, but it probably started when she stopped talking to me altogether. Our evenings used to be filled with conversations about anything and everything, work, dreams, random thoughts about the day. But now there was just nothing. We'd sit in the same room, but it was like we were miles apart. I'd try to ask her about her day, try to make a joke, and she'd just nod absent-mindedly or mumble some half-assed response, her eyes always glued to that damn phone of hers. It was like she didn't even see me anymore. And yeah, that phone became a sore spot between us. Not just because she guarded it like it held the secrets of the universe, but because every time I looked at it, I saw the barrier between us. When the password changed, that was the moment I knew I had to do something. It wasn't about privacy. It was about trust, or the lack of it. One evening, Mira had another one of her infamous gatherings. By then, these little get-togethers felt like the only time I could breathe. Being around her was like taking a break from my own miserable reality, and I needed that. So I went over, and for once, Kate decided to come along. I didn't think much of it. Maybe she was feeling guilty or trying to put on a show for the neighbors. Who knows? But the point is, she was there, and so was that phone. I remember it like it was yesterday. Kate was distracted, chatting with one of the neighbors, and I was off to the side, nursing my drink. And that's when I saw it. Her fingers tapping away on the screen, entering her new password. It was quick, just a few seconds, but I tried to burn the sequence into my memory. I thought I had it, but when I tried it later that night, my mind went blank. All those numbers and movements blurred together like a bad dream. I cursed under my breath, knowing I'd lost my chance. That's when things got real desperate. I started watching her, not just casually but actively like some creep. Every time she pulled out that phone, my eyes were on her fingers trying to piece together that damn code. But she was careful, and the opportunity never came again. at least not right away. Then one night, fate finally threw me a bone. It was late, and Kate had already gone to bed. I laid there, staring at the ceiling, running through every worst-case scenario in my head. And then, as if on cue, she rolled over, her phone lighting up beside her. Half asleep, she picked it up, and I knew this was my chance. I turned away, pretending to be asleep, but kept one eye open, watching as she lazily entered the code. My heart raced as I watched, committing every tap and swipe to memory. And that was it, the key to Pandora's box. I waited until she was fully asleep, her breathing steady and deep, before I made my move. I knew I had one shot at this. With shaking hands, I reached over, grabbed the phone, and entered the code. It unlocked, and I let out a shaky breath, trying to steady myself for whatever I was about to find. The messages, God, those messages. It felt like a punch to the gut, like my worst fears materializing right in front of my eyes. They were all there: texts, voice notes, photos, and it was all between Kate and David. I remember reading the first message and thinking maybe it wasn't so bad, maybe I was reading too much into it. But the further I scrolled, the clearer it became. It was like peeling back layers of a rotting onion, every layer more sickening than the last. She told him everything, how she didn't love me anymore, how I was just some loser she felt trapped with, how she wished she'd met him sooner, so she could have avoided all this misery. The worst part? The way they talked about me, like I was some kind of joke. David, with all his smug confidence, calling me pathetic, making fun of my little routines, my quirks, all the things I thought made our marriage ours. It felt like someone had ripped out my insides and stomped all over them. And then I came across the invitation, a message from Kate to David, telling him about a party at our house, my house, where she wanted him to come over while I was at work. "Don't worry," she wrote. "He's gone all day. It'll just be you and me. Can't wait to finally be alone together." That line played on repeat in my head like a broken record. She wanted him in our home, in our bed, with no shame, no second thoughts. I don't know how long I sat there, scrolling through those messages, feeling the ground fall away beneath me. A part of me wanted to wake her up right then and there, throw the phone in her face, and watch her squirm as she tried to explain herself. But another part of me, I just felt numb, like I was outside my own body, watching some stranger's life unravel. Eventually, I put the phone back, crawled into bed, and just stared at the ceiling until the sun came up. Everything felt different. The room, the bed, even the air I was breathing. And I knew, from that moment on, nothing would ever be the same again. The morning after I went through Kate's phone, everything felt surreal. You ever have those dreams that are so vivid, so messed up, you wake up wondering if any of it was real? That's how it felt, except there was no waking up. No, thank God, it was just a nightmare moment. Kate carried on like everything was normal, getting ready for work, barely looking in my direction as she breezed out the door with her phone clutched tight. And me? I was left there just empty. The betrayal sat in my gut like a stone, making everything else feel small, insignificant. But I couldn't confront her. Not yet. Not until I figured out what the hell I was going to do. Mira could tell something was up. I mean, I probably looked like hell, unshaven, bags under my eyes, walking around like a zombie. She caught me outside one day as I was heading to my car. "Hey, stranger," she said, leaning on the fence that separated our yards. "You look like you've seen better days. What's going on?" And just like that, it all came spilling out. I didn't even plan on telling her, not really. But the way she looked at me, the genuine concern in her voice, it was like she opened a floodgate. "Can we talk?" I blurted out, barely able to meet her eyes. I just need to talk to someone." She nodded, giving me that warm smile of hers. "Of course. Come over tonight. We'll have dinner, and you can tell me everything." That night felt like some kind of twisted therapy session. Myra's place was cozy, intimate, candles on the table, soft music playing in the background. She made pasta, the smell of garlic and tomatoes filling the room as I sat there, trying to keep it together. And once we sat down, wine glasses in hand. I let it all out. I told her about Kate, the texts, the car, the lies, everything. And she listened, really listened, nodding along, never interrupting, just letting me pour my heart out. By the time I was done, I felt like I'd been hit by a truck, but there was also this strange relief, like I'd finally let go of this unbearable weight. "That's wow," Mira finally said, her voice low and steady. "James, I'm so sorry. You don't deserve any of this." She reached across the table, placing her hand on mine, and the warmth of her touch felt like a lifeline. "But you can't just sit back and take it. You have to do something." I nodded, but what the hell could I do? I wasn't the kind of guy to scream or throw things. Confrontation wasn't my style. "I don't know what to do," I admitted, my voice cracking a little. I feel so powerless, like she's taken everything from me, and I can't even fight back." Myra's eyes narrowed, and I saw a flicker of something in her expression. Something fierce, almost protective. "Then fight back," she said, her voice gaining a dangerous edge. "You have to hit them where it hurts. Make them pay for what they've done." "Yeah? And how am I supposed to do that?" I scoffed, downing the rest of my wine. "She's already living her best life, sneaking around behind my back like I don't even exist. What the hell am I supposed to do?" That's when she leaned in closer, her voice dropping to a near whisper. "Catch them in the act," she said. "Prove to everyone who they really are. Set up a hidden camera. Catch them in your own bedroom. And when you have that footage, well, let's just say people like David and Kate don't look so powerful when they're exposed for what they really are." Her words hit me like a sledgehammer. A hidden camera? It sounded insane, something straight out of a bad movie. But as crazy as it sounded, there was a twisted logic to it. A way to take back control, to finally see Kate and David's whole deceit laid bare. "You really think I should do that?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. And Mira didn't even hesitate. "Yes," she said, her eyes locking with mine. "You need to show them that they don't get to just walk all over you." We sat in silence for a moment, the gravity of what she'd just proposed hanging in the air. And then something changed. Maybe it was the wine, or maybe it was the anger boiling under the surface. But I leaned forward, my eyes never leaving hers. "You really think this will work?" I asked again, and she nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "Trust me, James. It's time you started taking care of yourself. And I'll help you, whatever you need." And that's how it happened. One minute we were talking about revenge, and the next we were kissing hard, desperate, like we were both drowning and the other person was our only way to breathe. I knew it was wrong, but in that moment, it felt like the only right thing. I didn't think about the consequences, about Kate, about anything except the way Myra's hands felt on my skin, the way she looked at me like I was the only man in the world. We stumbled to the bedroom, shedding clothes, tangling together in a mess of limbs and breathless whispers. And for the first time in a long time, I felt alive. Afterward, as we lay there in the darkness, I realized something, a truth that I'd been denying for far too long. I didn't love Kate anymore. Whatever love I'd once felt had been smothered by her lies, her betrayal, the way she looked at me like I was nothing. And lying there with Mira, I knew that there was no going back, no fixing what was already broken beyond repair. The next day, Mira helped me get the hidden camera. We set it up together, in my own bedroom, and right at the bed where Kate and David thought they could carry on their affair without anyone knowing. And as I watched the lens stare back at me, I knew one thing for sure. The truth was coming for them, whether they were ready for it or not. You'd think I'd feel guilty, setting up a hidden camera in my own bedroom, like some sleazy private eye from a B-movie. But the truth? I felt nothing but cold resolve. Every fiber of me screamed for justice. I wanted them to pay Kate, David, the whole goddamn lie they were living right under my nose. And Mira, she was my anchor, my partner in crime, the one keeping me from unraveling. I remember standing beside her in my bedroom, staring at that small, hidden camera nestled among the books on the shelf, its unblinking lens aimed right at our bed. "Are you ready?" she asked, and I just nodded. No going back now. The waiting, that was the hardest part. Days went by like molasses, and every moment felt like an eternity, knowing what I'd find when I finally got the footage. And then it happened like clockwork. Kate texted me saying she'd be working late and that I shouldn't wait up. A line that once meant nothing now felt like a sledgehammer to my chest. But I played my role, just as she expected. I got home, made myself dinner, sat on the couch, and waited for the show to begin. I remember the sound of the door opening. Kate's familiar laugh followed by David's low murmur. My skin prickled with rage as they walked right past me, barely acknowledging I was there, like I was some kind of ghost haunting my own home. We're going to talk some business in the bedroom, she said casually, like I didn't already know the score. Sure, I replied, my voice steady, holding back the disgust bubbling beneath the surface. And just like that, they disappeared into the bedroom, closing the door behind them. The clock ticked agonizingly slow as I sat on the couch, pretending to read a book, straining to hear every sound that slipped through the walls. Soft laughter, the rustling of sheets. It was all I needed to know that my plan had worked. And all I had to do was wait. The next day, while Kate was at work, I retrieved the footage. My hands shook as I plugged the camera into my laptop, knowing full well what I was about to see. And there was high-definition betrayal, right there on the screen. I watched as my wife, the woman I'd loved and trusted for years, kissed her boss, stripping away every last piece of clothing, dignity, and respect in the process. They didn't hold back, didn't worry about being discreet. To them, I was nothing more than an afterthought, the poor, clueless husband too stupid to know what was happening in his own house. I felt sick, disgusted, but at the same time, there was this twisted satisfaction in having proof. I had them, right there caught red-handed, and now it was my turn to decide how this story would play out. I wasn't going to let them off easy. That's not how this was going to end. So I uploaded the video, anonymously, of course, to a popular social media site, sending it out into the world like a virus. Within hours, it spread like wildfire. I watched as comments flooded in, strangers dissecting every frame, calling out Kate and David for what they were. Some of the comments were brutal, and for once, I didn't feel guilty about it. They deserved every ounce of shame, every piece of ridicule thrown their way. And then the fallout began. David got the call first. I knew because I made sure to circulate the video to his office's internal network. No way it'd stay quiet in a place like that. He was called into a meeting with the higher-ups, and from what I heard, he didn't take it well. Yelling, doors slamming, all that good stuff. Apparently, having your affair splashed across the internet doesn't look so great when you're in a position of power. Kate found out soon after. At first, she didn't believe it. This is some sick joke, right? She said, staring at her phone in disbelief as the video played on loop. And then, like a switch flipping, her disbelief turned to fury. How dare you? She screamed, her voice sharp and venomous. How dare you do this to me? You ruined everything. I remember just standing there, letting her words bounce off me like they meant nothing. I ruined everything? I asked, my voice calm, almost too calm. You ruined it the second you decided to sleep with David. It was like a dam bursting. She threw everything at me. Not just words, but excuses, twisted accusations, the whole 9 yards. You were always so passive, she screamed, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. You just let everything happen. You don't fight for anything. I couldn't stand living like that anymore. The irony of it all was almost laughable. Here she was screaming at me for being passive when she was the one sneaking around, screwing her boss behind my back. I'll leave you for David, she threatened, her voice cracking as tears welled up in her eyes. At least he understands me. At least he makes me feel alive. And that's when I realized I felt nothing. No sadness, no anger, just relief. Relief that I didn't have to pretend anymore, that I didn't have to fight for a woman who had no intention of ever fighting for me. Good, I said, meeting her gaze with a steady calmness. Leave. Go to him. Because we're done, Kate. There's nothing left here." And with those words, I walked out of the room, leaving her alone with the weight of everything she'd destroyed. I filed for divorce the next day. I thought I'd feel guilty, thought I'd have second thoughts about ending a marriage that had once meant everything to me. But as I signed those papers, all I felt was freedom, the kind of freedom that comes when you finally shed something that's been weighing you down for years. Kate begged, pleaded, tried to bargain her way out of it. But I was done listening. She made her choice, and so did I. For the first time in a long time, I felt happy. And that happiness had nothing to do with revenge or payback. It was about taking back control of my life, reclaiming my own happiness, and leaving behind the toxic mess that was my marriage. And the best part? I didn't have to look back. Because while Kate and David were left to pick up the shattered pieces of their lives, I was already moving forward into something new, something better. It's strange how life can flip on its head so quickly. One day you're living what you think is the perfect suburban life, and the next, everything's burning down around you. And then, before you know it, you're rebuilding from the ashes, finding something better, something real. That's what it was like for me after Kate and I split. It wasn't some fairy tale ending where everything falls perfectly into place, but it was real. And that's all I ever really wanted. The fallout from the scandal was more brutal than I expected, at least for Kate and David. I didn't feel bad for either of them. They deserved it, plain and simple. David lost his job almost immediately after the video went viral. Guess his company didn't take kindly to one of their top dogs being caught on camera doing the dirty with an employee. And Kate? Well, her office wasn't exactly thrilled to find out their model employee had been having an affair with her boss on company time. So, they let her go too. Just like that, they both fell from their high horses, their perfect little world crumbling around them. But that was their mess to deal with, not mine. For me, life was lighter. I like to say I had this whole big plan for what to do next, but the truth is I didn't. All I knew was that I had to move forward. And I wasn't moving forward alone. Mira was there. Through all of it, the chaos, the divorce, the whispers from neighbors, the awkward stares when I went out. She was my rock, my constant, the one who never flinched no matter how messy things got. I remember sitting on her porch one night, sipping wine as we watched the sun set over the neighborhood. "What now?" I asked, staring out at the fading light. And she just shrugged, giving me that easy smile of hers. "Now we start fresh. You deserve a new beginning, James." We both do. It was simple, but it was the truth. We started talking about our future, a real future, one that didn't involve lies and betrayal. Mira made me realize that I deserved to be happy, to be with someone who actually cared. And as much as I hated to admit it, Kate's betrayal was the wake-up call I never knew I needed. Kate tried to reach out to me a few times after the dust settled. Phone calls, texts, even a handwritten letter. All of them full of regret and apologies, saying she missed me, that she wanted to talk things through. I didn't even bother reading most of it, because I knew deep down it wasn't really about me. She didn't miss me. She missed the stability, the safety net I'd always provided. But that ship had sailed, and I was already too far gone to care. I didn't need her pity or her excuses, and I definitely didn't need her back in my life. The divorce went through faster than I thought it would. We split everything cleanly. I didn't fight her for the house, didn't try to bleed her dry. I didn't need to. I was already free, and that freedom was worth more than any money or property we could have fought over. And when those final papers came through, I felt this sense of closure, like a door slamming shut on a chapter of my life that I was more than ready to leave behind. Mira and I talked about taking a trip, a real vacation to just unwind and leave everything behind. A beach sounded perfect, sand, waves, the smell of salt water. And more than that, the idea of being somewhere far away, away from the memories, the neighbors, the gossip. It was like a breath of fresh air. "Let's do it," she said one night, her eyes lighting up at the thought. "Let's go to the beach. Just you and me. No drama, no stress. Just us." It wasn't about running away, it was about starting over. And that's exactly what we did. We packed our bags, booked a cozy little place by the ocean, and set off to celebrate our new beginning. I remember standing on that beach, the waves crashing around my feet, Myra's hand in mine, and thinking about how far I'd come, about how much had changed, how much I'd changed. It wasn't a fairy tale, life's rarely that simple, but it was real, and it was mine. Kate, last I heard, she was struggling to find work, bouncing between temp jobs and trying to get her life back on track. I didn't feel sorry for her. She made her bed, and now she had to lie in it. She tried to reconnect with me one last time, right before the divorce was finalized, saying she needed closure and wanted to see me face to face. But I couldn't do it. I couldn't sit across from her, pretending like we were two people who could ever make things right again. I was done, and nothing she could say would ever change that. David? He disappeared, more or less. Quit his job, sold his car, probably moved to another city to try to start over. It was pathetic, really, how quickly he fell apart once everything came crashing down. And Kate, of course, was left in the rubble, trying to figure out how to pick up the pieces. But like I said, that wasn't my problem anymore. The beach trip with Mira was exactly what I needed. A chance to breathe, to let go, to start fresh. We spent our days lying in the sun, swimming in the ocean, talking about everything and nothing. And every day, I felt more and more like myself. Like the James I used to be, before all the lies, the betrayal, the hurt. Looking back on everything that happened, it's easy to say I should have seen it coming, that I should have done this or that differently. But the truth is, I don't regret any of it. Not anymore. Because in the end, that betrayal forced me to see things for what they really were. It broke me, sure, but it also rebuilt me, made me stronger. And that's a lesson I'll carry with me for the rest of my life. Mira and I, we're doing good, real good. I'm not saying it's perfect, because nothing ever is, but it's honest. And that honesty, that openness, is worth more than any picture-perfect marriage ever could be. We're planning on traveling more, seeing the world, living the kind of life that I always dreamed of but never thought I could have. So yeah, Kate's gone, and David's a ghost from my past. And I'm still standing, stronger than before, ready for whatever life throws my way. Because in the end, that's what it's all about, moving forward no matter what and finding peace in the chaos. And for the first time in a long time, I'm at peace.